Heyoos, Clipper here, and welcome back to another study session. Last time we got to the Statue of the Seven, technically received the power of Animo and kinda didn't do anything with it. So today we're actually going to be discussing said powers, and then where we're going to move on from here. As I said last time though, this part is kinda hefty, so just mentally prepare yourself for that. There's gonna be a lot.
어때? 이 세계의 원소 힘이 느껴져? 보아하니 넌 그냥 신상을 만지기만 해도 바람 원소의 힘을 얻을 수 있는 것 같아. 그치만 여기 사람들은 절대 이렇게 쉽게 힘을 얻을 수가 없는데.
이 힘의 근원은 역시
그래, 네가 이 세계에 속한 사람이 아니라서 그런 것 같아. 서쪽으로 가면 자유의 성 몬드가 있어. 몬드는 바람의 도시로 바람의 신을 모시고 있지. 넌 신성에서 힘을 얻을 수 있어. 몬드성에서 신에 대한 단서를 찾을 수 있을지도 몰라. 게다가 몬드에는 아주 많은 음유 시인이 있다고. 네 여동생의 소식을 들을 수 있을 거야. 그럼 출발하자. 이 세계의 원소가 너의 기도에 응답했어. 좋은 징조야.
Yeah, we're gonna be here for a while. So let's just start off simple with 어때? Which is just, how is it? Someone follows up with 이 세계의 원소 힘이 느껴져? So 느끼다 on its own is to feel, whereas 느껴지다, as we see here, is actually to be felt. In English, we would probably phrase this more like, can you feel this world's elemental power? Which directly translated into Korean would be closer to 힘을 느껴, but this works just fine as well. Next up, I'm just gonna be starting with 보아하니 넌 그냥 신상을 만지기만 해도. First off, 보아하니 is kind of like seemingly or apparently. 그냥 is kind of like when you hear someone say, just do it. And then 만지기만 has a couple different aspects that we're gonna have to go over. First off, we've got 만지다, which is like to touch. And then we've got this 기 ending, which turns out has more uses than just lists and labels. One of which is helping to connect verbs to this 만 ending, which means only. And then this next phrase really confuses me because one explanation I saw was that 만하다 was used as a comparison tool, and then another is that 아도 is used as regardless, but I don't really see either of those fitting here. So if I see either of these crop up again, I'm really gonna have to pay attention next time. I'm personally gonna read this first part as, apparently, if you just touch the statue, 바람 원소의 힘을 얻을 수 있는 것 같아. So, 얻다 is like to get, and then this phrase, 것 같아, is used the way we would say, seems like. So altogether, the second half is, seems like you can get the power of the wind element. On the other hand here, we've got, 그치만 여기 사람들은 절대 이렇게 쉽게 힘을 얻을 수가 없는데. So, 그치만 isn't actually anything new, it's just a shortened version of 그렇지만, and then I'm gonna focus on 사람들 right here. So last time we learned that 분 was a polite way of referring to a person. 사람 here is a much more casual word for person. And then this particle 들 is where we finally see our plural particle. So in case I haven't gotten over it yet, in Korean they don't really specify between plural and singulars that often, so that's why we haven't really seen this particle used that much, and in fact we'll only really be seeing 들 when it's referring to multiple people. So 여기 사람들은 is going to refer to the people here. So next I'm going to be looking at 절대 이렇게 쉽게. 절대 kind of works as absolutely, though it's typically more in the context of absolutely not. And then 쉽다 is to be easy, so this chunk is talking about something that's absolutely not done this easily. Also, don't lose sleep over this particle here, it doesn't significantly change the meaning at all. So altogether, Paimon's kind of going, however, the people here absolutely can't get power this easily. And now we finally got some of the traveler's first dialogue options. Fun! For this first option, I'm just going to focus on 역시, which is kind of like, as expected. So I'm actually reading this top option as, the source of this power, of course. Or you could go with the second option and be like, this is some dirty ghost trip, but I'm not doing that today. And upon mentioning the source of our power, Papago goes, 그래, 네가 이 세계에 속한 사람이 아니라서 그런 것 같아. So starting up front here, 그래 kind of functions as yeah or that's right. Now I'm actually going to jump up ahead to 아니라서. So 아니라 is used when you want to describe that something is not one thing, but it is another. So in this case, that functions kind of as, you are not from this world, you can just get the animal power. And then this asa ending kind of adds a fun little twist to this. Earlier we learned that this denotes means or method, but today it's actually being used more as because. And much like a lot of things in Korean, it's going to read a little bit backwards from how we think of things in English. So to give you an idea of how this works, this whole bit reads as, oh yeah, it seems like it's because you're not a person from this world. Then Paimon goes, 서쪽으로 가면 자유의 성 몬드가 있어. So for 서쪽으로, 서 is kind of like west, and then 쪽, much like uro, denotes direction, but you gotta pair the two together if you're talking about things like cardinal directions and left and right. So 서쪽으로 가면, if we go west, 자유의 성 몬드가 있어. 자유 is freedom, so I'm thinking of this part as there's Mondstadt, the castle of freedom. Moving on, we have 몬드는 바람의 도시로 바람의 신을 모시고 있지. And the only part you really need to know from this is 도시, which is city. And just so you know what's going on, this whole bit is, as the city of wind, Mondstadt is serving the wind god, right? Next up, we've got 난 신상에서 힘을 얻을 수 있어. So you can get power from the statues. And that's followed up by 몬드성에서 신에 대한 단서를 찾을 수 있을지도 몰라. So I'm gonna start with this little chunk, 신에 대한 단서. So we can see that 대하다 actually uses 에 to connect with things, much like 의하다. And while it has a couple of different meanings, I like to think of it as about. And this particular chunk, I like to think of as a clue about the god, or a lead to the god. And then this 을지도 ending kind of helps to add uncertainty to a situation when something really could go either way. So altogether, I like to think of this part as, I don't know whether or not we can find a lead to the god in Mondstadt. Next, Paimon goes, 게다가 몬드에는 아주 많은 음유시인이 있다고 네 여동생의 소식을 들을 수 있을 거야. So first off here we have 게다가, which kind of acts as besides. And then jumping ahead to 아주 많은 음유시인, 아주 is kind of like very, and then 많다 is to be many or to be a lot of. So 아주 많은 음유시인, very many bards. Obviously, I'm not too worried about 음유시인. However, I would like to note that the syllable probably comes from the word 음악, which means music. Cute little thing. And then this 다고 ending took me a long while to figure out, and turns out it's actually 다고, misspelled for added cuteness. And this ending is actually used in quoting, specifically after adjectives, because apparently 있다 and 없다 are considered adjectives and not verbs, so I'm gonna have to remember that. It's not quite clear who Paimon is quoting here, so I'm going to assume that she's quoting herself right now. So altogether, this first half is kind of like, besides, I've said that there are very many bards in Mondstadt. And then for the second half, I'm gonna jump ahead to this little part here, which actually comes from 듣다, meaning to hear. So the second half is kind of like, we'll be able to hear news of our little sister. 그럼 출발하자. I think I'll let you figure that one out on your own again. And then finally, we have 이 세계의 원소가 나의 기도에 응답했어. Since we've seen it fairly recently, 응답하다 is kind of like to reply or to respond. And we can see that this too is connected using 에. So altogether, this bit would be, the elements of this world responded to your prayer. And then we finish with 좋은 징조야. 좋다 is to be good, so Paimon is just saying, it's a good omen. Whoop, here we go. 눌러서 원소 전투 스킬 사용. So 사용 on its own is kind of like use. We'll probably see 사용하다 later on, which you might be able to guess is to use. So this is kind of like push to use the elemental combat skill. And then we got 길게 눌러 차지하면 위력이 강해집니다. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out that 차지하다 is just to charge. And then 강하다 on its own is just to be strong, whereas 강해지다, as we see it here, is more like to grow strong. So I'm kind of thinking of this part as hold to charge your skill and its power will grow. Next up, 눌러서 원소 폭발 사용. So, push to use your elemental burst.
이건 네가 일곱 신상에서 얻은 바람 원소의 힘이야. 아, 부럽다. 나도 이렇게 멋지게 싸우고 싶어.
So first off, we've got our first achievement, 바람의 인도, which is kind of like the wind's guide or the wind's lead. Then Paimon goes, 이건 네가 일곱 신상에서 얻은 바람 원소의 힘이야. So basically, this is the power of the wind element that you got from the Statue of the Seven. Then Paimon goes, 부럽다. I'm envious. 나도 이렇게 멋지고 싸우고 싶어. Here Paimon uses 멋지다, though you may also see 멋있다. Both mean to be cool. Then 싸우다 is to fight, and then this 고 싶다 ending expresses that you want to do something. So Paimon's kind of going, I want to fight all cool like this too. And then we've got all these menus. 페이몬 아이콘을 누르면 페이몬을 불러낼 수 있습니다. So 부르다 on its own is pretty loosely used, though here I would translate it as to call, whereas 불러내다 is specifically to call out to someone or to summon someone. And that is where I will finally leave us. Next time we'll be able to do a little bit more exploration and see a bit more of what this world has to offer us. But for now, thank you so much for following along with me, take care, and I'll see you across the ecliptic.
Oh boy.